not for the faint-hearted. An undertaking on paper. The assignment.
You're either elite or you're not. That's what we've been saying.
Strive for perfection week after week.
And a dream come true.
Push through the pain. Heal the heartbreak.
We say we're the best. I'll be the best.
Silence the noise and shake up the status quo.
Jim Harbaugh gets his win over Ohio State.
Figure out some way, any way, to be among the last team standing after 14 grueling weeks of football. The goal? Survive the assignment.
And he did not get there!
So, did you?
They've done everything they've been asked to do.
The final grades are in.
It's a house call for Michigan.
The more things change, the more they remain the same.
Who's playing for a national championship?
It's kind of predictable today. Let's just be honest.
Oh, my God.
You know, I mean, we knew what was coming, right? We had to know after last night.
Or did we?
Oh,
I was still a little confused about stuff. Who knew what could have happened?
God, I can't wait to see where this one goes. It's Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It, Mike Golick Jr., Christine Williamson. I'm Jason Fitz, and my mic's not on, so I'm going to try all this again, and we're just going to...
Wow.
Jason
He's a
Fitz, the
professional.
consummate professional, 5 years into this show, and in the last one of the season, starts the last rankings off with his microphone
So,
not
I was
It
working.
is
wondering
on
why it
now,
didn't
but-
sound like you were yelling as loud.
Well,
Yeah.
That's what I did. Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. I'm Mike Golick Jr.
Wait, that wasn't a bit? That wasn't a bit.
No,
Why
that was
do you
just
wanna
that.
be either one
He's
of us
Mike
so
Golick
bad?
Jr. She's
That
Christine
is
Williamson.
true. This is the second time this year you've
Said
tried
it
to.
was me once.
Identity theft is not a joke,
You know,
Jason.
here's the thing, guys. I'm just going to be honest with you. I went to tinkle right before the show, and when you tinkle, you got to turn your mic off because
Why
you
do
don't
you
want
call
everybody to
it
listen to
tinkle?
tinkle. Because I'm the Giannis Antetokounmpo of ESPN. So I went to tinkle, and I turned my mic off, and I forgot to turn it back on. Now I'm flustered. The whole show has started off, and we're off the rails. It's Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Jason Fitz, Christine Williamson, Mike Golick Jr. I don't know what I'm doing, y'all. You want to talk about the rankings?
There's not even like a prompter where we can make the joke that you Ron Burgundied this.
Nope.
You are just an idiot.
This is his brain.
Nope, this is just what's happening. The committee has spoken. They have given us our top teams. Let's take a look here. Like I said,
spoke a lot better
without
than
a mic on.
Jason.
Yeah, that is fair. At number 6, Ohio State.
That one was a little surprising.
It was a lot surprising because at number 5 is Notre Dame,
The
which
Fighting
means
Irish.
that we've spent weeks, and by we I mean Christine, talking about the conspiracy theory that was going to get somehow a Big 12 champion. Big 12 champ didn't even make the top 6.
I feel like because Oklahoma State absolutely just pooped the bed, they were like, you know what? We're like, if they were going to try to put Baylor in the top 6, it would be very clear that they're just like doing things just to do them. So yeah, I mean, this makes sense.
I would have kind of understood that even, but you're right. That game was a full-on bed poop.
Yes.
Went from Bedlam to bed poop.
No bed pooping by Cincinnati. They had their one job.
Hey.
We wondered if Houston would be able to give them a tough game. They did up until halftime. It was 14-13 at the half, and the final score was like 382-13. Don't look it up.
The big play Bearcats came out on that
382.
one.
Yeah,
Jerome Ford was out there running. I mean, it begins and ends on offense with Desmond Ridder. It's an exciting season. All credit to Luke Fickell and that staff for the job that they've done here. They weathered the storm in the middle of that season. Now they get to break the ceiling here.
Yeah,
Right.
and when Ford plays that well, also, I know it runs through Ridder, but I think Ford had 187 yards last night. You just talk about somebody that was unstoppable running the football. At number 3, Georgia.
I knew you were going to do that.
I mean, down 2 after getting their butts whooped, after getting slapped around, after getting absolutely daddied by Alabama.
I tell you what, we'll get into plenty more of what happened in that game because we have the opportunity for a rematch. Let me speak first from the Notre Dame fan within me. Georgia, we trusted you. You had one job yesterday.
I know.
We're sitting right there at 5.
I feel like that's like everybody in America, though, because it was like, we want to see what happens if Alabama loses. If it's a close game, are they going to let a 2-loss team in? If it's not a close game, are they going to boot Alabama out? And then Georgia didn't even give us the opportunity to see what happens.
L. Duncan, I put my faith in your football team.
That's a you.
And this is how I got rewarded. I finally had America on my side. People were like, oh, man, wouldn't it be cool if likable new Notre Dame made it into the playoff and won a natty without Brian Kelly? And now we don't get to see that.
I don't know.
Win one game.
I don't know who's more delusional, Georgia fans on Friday or Notre Dame fans today that are convinced they're likable. At number 2, speaking of Notre Dame,
tweets.
Michigan. Oh, I mean, there's just.
I tell you what, though. I mean, completely changed the trajectory of this program now, right? We're coming off last year. You had folks around there ready to fire Jim Harbaugh, really spending the last 2 years doing that.
Right.
And now they win a Big Ten championship, get their first win against Ohio State, and make the CFP for the first time. That has altered the trajectory of that Michigan program for another couple years because we know this is how college football works.
Yeah, let's keep those old takes exposed tweets from all the fans that are now like, we always believed in Harbaugh. The number 1 team in all the land. I don't think this is a big shock. Oh, I'll be honest. I came in thinking maybe the committee would mix it up. But for a year of chaos, unparalleled chaos, for a year that's seen more upsets than ever in history, for the year that's seen more top 10 teams lose, for more ranked teams losing to unranked teams, for all of the uncertainty of college football, Bama's number 1.
Run from it.
Literally.
Dread it all you want. Yo soy inevitable. Alabama snaps their fingers. I saw Jeff Schwartz tweet this out, college football analyst.
What was that noise?
He said it was. First, well, you said I am inevitable.
Yeah, yo soy inevitable. They used that Thanos scene from the Avengers movie where he says, I am inevitable, and snaps his fingers. They used it in some sort of, I believe, Spanish car commercial, and they had Thanos say, yo soy inevitable, and it is a deep internet reference. Can you just let me live for a second?
Go ahead.
I don't know that reference either.
I saw Jeff Schwartz tweet it out. Like, what a wonderful year where you look around. Pitt won the ACC championship. Michigan's your Big Ten champion. Utah won the Pac-12. Dave Aranda's Baylor wins the Big 12. And let's just not talk about upstart Alabama.
Is number 1.
Little old
once
Bama.
again.
I mean,
God in heaven.
It's not
They're going to
just
do
that
this again,
Alabama's
aren't they?
number 1. It's that Alabama went in there and kicked the snot out of a Georgia defense that 2 days ago we all felt like was otherworldly. Like a Georgia defense that we spent, and we, I mean the collective college football media culture, spent about a week talking about how many of the guys on the defensive side of the ball are future top-round draft picks,
and they are
NFL players, and they are. All of these things can be true. And still, I was watching an Alabama team that Auburn absolutely controlled the line of scrimmage against. And Alabama came out against a much better defense than Auburn and was like, nah, we're good. Like, Jordan Davis, nah, he's not all that good. Like, it was amazing watching just Alabama assert themselves and reset the line of scrimmage consistently in this game. It was gross.
Yeah, it was, I think, great play calling by Bill O'Brien in this game. He hunted down some awesome matchups for the skill where Alabama probably had an advantage going into that one. We had heard plenty about Georgia's secondary not getting the most robust test. The math on the game changed entirely when Alabama's offensive line decided to look the way that the talent would always have told you that could look, but had not shown up for the vast majority of this season. And Georgia, Jason, you and I were talking about this before the show, kind of went the route of LSU, who blitzed them at an unholy level and completely junkyarded that game. Georgia's blitzes all got picked up. Alabama saw blitzes as well as any line I've seen this year in that game. And so now it made all things even. And when all things were even, you have who is likely the Heisman Trophy winner in Bryce Young playing quarterback for you with a group of skill players led by Jamison Williams who are out there ready to do work.
I mean, but stop me if we've heard this before. Alabama went in and out-schemed and out-coached Georgia.
Which we knew was going to happen.
I mean,
it's Nick Saban.
Did we?
I knew if there was one team that could actually beat Georgia, it was going to be Alabama because Nick Saban has had the longest time to prepare for this team. Like, they knew that they were going up against one another, and Nick Saban was, I mean, he had that yummy rat poison.
Oh, can we bottle Nick Saban saying yummy and hold on to it for the rest of time?
But you tweeted something last night, Mike.
About him saying yummy?
No, thank God.
Yummy.
These Cheez-Its are yummy. You tweeted something last night about the fact that, like, sure, the losses happen, but let's see how they get over this one. Like, for Georgia, this was the swift kick in the no-no places that you don't just get back up on your roller skates after. I have no idea what that analogy means, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, get back up on your roller skates.
I don't know. It's that sort of day. Things are going
that is true. You know what? I should just be glad that you got competent words out and didn't swear on air. I would say this, though, because I heard some people bring up that idea of how motivated was Georgia, knowing no matter what they were going to get into the playoff. I would hope very motivated because that boogeyman, is the last team on earth I would want to have to see twice in all of this. Because there is a mental hurdle for a lot of this stuff, right? Alabama got, and I know it's not the same group of guys, but like, you hold on to those sentiments, right? There are certain hills you got to climb, and even for a program that's accomplished as much as Georgia, to go out and once again have it not be enough against the team that has been the one thing standing between you and being the dominant program in college sports.
Right.
That's going to be something that they've got to overcome in the next 40, whatever the days are.
Conspiracy theorists, like maybe, Christine, maybe Georgia intentionally lied down because they know they're going to win the national championship.
Here's the thing. People I don't know, I mean, I understand people saying that, but it's not like it was like the last regular season game. It was an SEC championship. So they still did have something on the line.
Yes.
They still had to win that game in order to be SEC champions, and they didn't do that. So if it was the end of the regular season, it was like, oh, they just weren't paying attention. It was a regular game against Alabama, okay.
Yes.
But it's still an SEC championship.
Yeah, this isn't week 17 in the NFL when the seeding's
where they're just
already
tired
decided.
and they're like, we're going to be in the CFP anyways. Who cares about this matchup?
We glossed over one other significant thing in the top four, and that is Cincinnati has broken through, right?
Yeah.
Like Cincinnati made the college football playoff. Let's give them a little bit of love for a second. And, for everybody that's been having this loud group of five conversation, I feel like we've spent several years talking about whether or not Cincinnati belonged in the playoff, whether or not a group of five team belongs in the playoff. This is a team that was given a very distinct, order. Hey, go out and win. But also, to the point that we made last week, this is also a team that, frankly, the college football gods sort of shined upon them. These decisions got much easier based on the way everything played out on Saturday. We'll never know, but I feel like the path for Cincinnati was cleared not only because they played well, but because Oklahoma State didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly in there. It could have been a much tougher conversation potentially. But you're right. They did, and it's less like a blueprint because, we knew this was the blueprint. For the group of five, we've been saying going back to Houston, when De'Aaron King was leading Houston before that exodus there, before, all that. It was, hey, you've got to schedule tough out of conference, win those games, likely on the road, win all of the games in your conference, and then hope that the teams that you schedule, because we know outside of the pandemic year, for some reason, these have to be scheduled years in advance because money and TV and everything else. You do have to have a little bit of luck. It's not all that different from everybody else. I'll use Notre Dame as an example very specific to me. That is what Notre Dame's got to do every year. And it bit them this year because the rest of their schedule ended up being lesser, and they lost the one marquee game against Cincinnati that they ended up having on the schedule. And it changed the calculus for them. Cincy and the group of five have just had to build up some inertia for a while. Because again, you're working at a level of football that is comparatively lesser resources, lesser talented players going to it, and constantly has coaches leaving from that level to go to the next one. It's not hard for me to understand in theory why they are treated different one to the other.
I was going to say, they still had to pull out all of the stops because they're the only undefeated team to be number 4 in the playoffs in the history of the CFP. All other number 4s had at least one loss on the season. So Cincinnati had to do every possible thing in order to make it into the CFP. So they still had to pull out all the stops, but what else could have possibly happened?
We've got to bring in our first guest. I just want to stir the pot a little bit here and remind you, Mike, that if Notre Dame was in a conference, they would have had an ACC championship game, which would have given them the chance to get themselves into the college football playoff.
They'd have likely had an even weaker schedule.
Well, you know what? Let's not pick and choose our arguments here.
I'm just saying.
A conference championship might have helped them. Let's talk to our college football playoff resident expert, Heather Dinich. Heather, as always, we appreciate you today and every single week that you've joined us throughout the course of the season. So is there any big surprise to you in the way these rankings came out?
Not one surprise. I thought that this was exactly what the selection committee was going to do, and I felt like as they watched the games together on Saturday, just like we all watched them from afar outside the room, they had the same reaction. I mean, we saw what Alabama did to a Georgia defense that was the best in the country, and I feel like after Oklahoma State lost to Baylor, kind of knew that, okay, Cincinnati's not going to have to worry about a 2-loss Baylor probably. What else happens? And then as you see the first half of the Big Ten championship game unfold, by the time they're going into the third quarter watching these games, that picture really started to take shape, and it all sort of worked itself out, guys. I think this was pretty easy for the selection committee this year.
I was going to ask you that saying specifically, it will all work itself out, because that's what we said at the very beginning of the rankings. When you look at all 6 of these rankings, right, you said that you feel like the CFP did a good job. Do you feel like they could have done anything differently, or did it all just kind of work itself out?
Well, I think it did work itself out. I mean, in retrospect, do you remember the angst about Michigan being ahead of Michigan State? Well, kind of a shoulder shrug now, isn't it? I'm sure there's some validation in that selection committee meeting room, given what the Wolverines have done since then. So, I really think that for the majority of it, it all made sense. I mean, you can argue 1, 2, you can argue where Georgia falls, but I think I can certainly see how it's easy for them to justify all of it.
Heather, we know that while you've been outside of the committee's door down there in Dallas, you were also listening in on what was the conversation surrounding the meetings around playoff expansion and between a red-hot Utah team down the stretch of this season, what Ohio State's put on tape, Baylor, and that defense in the Big 12 title. Is this season, as chaotic and uncertain as it's been at the top, maybe pushed more of these voices or minds towards expansion, maybe more so than any year before?
Well, definitely considering where the ACC champion and Pac-12 champion are going to be ranked, you can certainly understand why Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff has come out and said that the automatic qualifiers is a sticking point in the room right now. But as much as you think that all of this chaos and uncertainty would push them in that direction, they're still not on the same page. That meeting that they had on Wednesday was their 6th in-person meeting to talk about playoff expansion. And if I'm being perfectly candid, I think that the likelihood of this happening within the length of this contract is slim to none right now. I think that if I had to predict it based on what happened this week and the comments that were made publicly, you're looking at 12-team format in 2026. But not even they know what's going to happen when they walk into that room. They've got one more shot to do this within the current term of the contract, and that will be when they meet again in Indianapolis at the National Championship in January.
All right, Heather, I need your expertise here because you answer the same questions from so many of us. I'm going to ask you something I don't think most people ask you. You're right outside the room. They watch these games together, right? When we watch a bunch of games together, even if we don't care, we're yelling, we're screaming. Like, what's the environment like for the 13 brightest minds in college football as they actually watch football together for one weekend?
Can I say the word library? It's pretty tame in there. It is pretty tame. I will tell you that the very first year, second year, when Barry Alvarez was in the room, I think it was the first year, and Wisconsin was playing in the Big Ten championship, I can remember lurking outside and hearing Alvarez yelling at the TV. And there's sort of stories about how passionate he was during those championship games. But I don't think there's been anything like that since the first year when he was on the committee. But you see the football knowledge in that room, and I tweeted out a picture, and every year I do that, and every year people just crush the committee and talk about just what a lame watch party it looks like. They're well aware of this. They got a great spread of food, but what they do is they talk about it. I mean, they talk football, right? You have people pointing out, hey, look at what Georgia's defensive line is not doing against this Alabama offensive line that a week ago allowed 7 sacks, right? Those are the type of conversations that are going on to the point where they generally get a feel for where things are headed, but they really don't start their deliberations until after all of those games are over and they start to vote in the meeting room next door.
Heather, as always, you're the best, my friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Enjoy your holiday. Thanks for joining us all season and making the show, frankly, much smarter.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
All right, guys, I'm just saying, there's a room here at ESPN on Sundays where a lot of people watch football. And I remember my first year working here, I went into that room and it was all of the analysts that work on all the different shows. Mm-hmm. Everybody's watching and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be, and they're yelling and screaming at the TV the whole time. Like all of the analysts that we watch all the time, because they're such big personalities, I think. I just had it in my mind that maybe they were all,
And so
going
watching
crazy.
that yesterday, am I remembering this right? Because I was flying back from Dallas yesterday, watching a lot of these games on planes. So I only saw some of the cut-ins. Were they sitting in the upright, meeting room chairs?
Yeah. They were.
That is the most despicable part of this to me. This is the College Football Playoff Committee. This is an esteemed position that is going to decide so much. Get them comfortable seating. Like, what did they do? Is this like the Seinfeld episode where you're afraid to give the security guard a chair because he's going to fall asleep?
That would be amazing if it was like a Shaq moment where one of the committee members is just out during halftime.
I can say you go right in there, it's just full on, like hands stuck in the front of the pants. They're just passed out.
There's like some sort of roast on their college
that's all
football
I'm saying.
fans.
Get them comfy chairs. You got to sit in that room for all day watching football. I don't want people agitated.
Right.
You're already going to be agitated.
There's a lot.
By the way, Mike was doing great stuff yesterday, but I have beef with it. We'll talk about that later, of course. In the meantime, let's go back to the guest. The revolving door of great guests that we have brings us now to Tom Luginbill, one of our favorites. Lugs, man, appreciate your time. You watch as much football as anybody I've ever met in my life. Did the committee get this right in general?
Absolutely. I think it's easy to debate what order you want to put them in. But I also think that the chaos that occurred the last 3 to 4 weeks of the season made their job just a bit easier. What happened in the Big 12 championship game yesterday made their job a little bit easier. Ohio State losing to Michigan made their job easier when it came to Cincinnati. I love it. I think that you could make an argument. Could it be Michigan at number one, Alabama at number one? Let's call it what it is. They don't want an Alabama-Georgia rematch in the semifinal. It's as simple as that. So everybody's going to get what they want here, and we're going to have great matchups. We're going to have great football, and ultimately, if you paid any attention to any of these teams all year long, we're going to have a great national championship matchup.
I mean, one game that definitely made the committee's life a lot easier is the fact that Alabama completely blew the doors off of Georgia, and a reason for that, one of them, Bryce Young, because he was absolutely insane yesterday. So as we talk about the Heisman and who should win the Heisman, obviously Bryce Young was in the lead in that conversation, and C.J. Stroud didn't play this week. Kenneth Walker didn't play this week. What do you feel Bryce Young's chances are to win the Heisman?
I actually think he won it. I think he won it yesterday. And if you look at the body of work overall, what's been the single biggest criticism of Alabama? It's been the right side of that offensive line. Their inability to run the football as effectively as they've become accustomed to doing over the past decade. And so what's been the great equalizer, that X factor? It's been Bryce Young's legs, his ability to create, his ability to extend plays when things weren't perfect. And if you watch this offense, there were a lot of moments that in the offensive line, if they didn't have Bryce Young, they were in big, big trouble. And then the performance against the vaunted Georgia defense yesterday, I think cemented his opportunity to win the Heisman Trophy, which would be what a remarkable feat. A guy that attempted 23 passes coming into the season a year ago to win the Heisman Trophy this year. I think he's won it.
Lugs, you mentioned the debate around who could be number one. What's been the difference for Michigan this year that's allowed them to finally get over so many humps?
You know what? I think whether it's a combination of the coaching staff chemistry, the locker room chemistry, they finally responded to the anticipation and hype of a big game and played well. We've heard about all of the negativity surrounding their inability to win big games, beat teams in the top 10. And I think the reason why we saw this team play so well, a couple of things. Number one, they're finally solidified at quarterback. Now, does Cade McNamara wear a cape? Probably not, but he's pretty darn functional. And they've got really good players around him. So instead of having the yo-yo effect, up 1 week down the next at quarterback, like they've had the last 4 or 5 years, they had a steadying force under center. And then I think that they've probably played as good a complementary football as anybody in the country when it comes to being able to defend the run, being able to rush the passer, being able to limit explosive plays. They're not a heavy penalized team. They're a smart, effective football team that can run the football and create explosive plays on offense. And they're an effective team in the kicking game. So when you look at these teams and you say, okay, well, what was different about Michigan? Well, you look at Alabama and you say, what's the glaring weakness? If you look at Georgia, what's the glaring weakness? If I look at Michigan, of course, not all teams are perfect, but I don't see a glaring weakness. I don't see something with their football team that I go, whoa, if that gets exposed, they're in big, big trouble. I think they're good enough across the board to match up with anybody.
Lugs, as always, my friend, we appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great holiday, brother.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Yes! Yes!
Oh,
that
well done.
is why Lugs is the best.
Thanks,
Baby. A
Mr.
man
Norwell.
Not now, Arctic Puppets.
I gave
the
Mike
best
this
movie
little
in the world.
nugget. Do you know who the voice of Mr. Narwhal is in the movie?
No.
By the way, for anyone that's missed it, that's the shirt I'm wearing right now.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Hope you find your dad.
That's the best part of the movie.
Yeah, that's Jon Favreau. He voiced Mr. Narwhal.
Oh,
so there we go.
Wow.
The more you know.
The more you know. All right, so what do we have? Speaking of the more you know, what do we have on social media going? Oh, God. That was...
By the way, speaking
I
of...
feel like I sounded...
That was actually really good.
Thanks. Let's go to social. Social is very interesting right now because there's two camps. There's the one that's like, oh my goodness, the committee got it right. I'm so happy. And then there's the other one that's like, this is just awful. So I think I'm going to go with some this is just awful ones.
You mean people don't like things on Twitter? Never!
Oh my God!
Wait, actually I have a couple ones that are, a couple of them that are kind of funny. Pretty rude of the CFP committee to plan those games on my wedding day.
Oh, I mean... Come on.
It was already going to happen.
Yeah. We don't have to have the football season wedding conversation. Like, get married
but
when you want.
This is a weird year. Like, the college football playoff, when they first scheduled these things years ago, they thought, and not Gary Barta, Hancock has mentioned a couple of times, that they're open about the fact that this was a strategic error. The first year that they tried to put it on New Year's Eve, the ratings weren't great. People didn't pay attention to it. And I'm like, oh, you're shocked? Like, what is that, a great date pickup where you're like, hey, babe, we want to go out for New Year's Eve? And like, I don't know, watch some football? Like,
I got a great spot. It's called the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, but we'll be at that, and you should watch it still. So we'll be in Miami, by the way.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
This one, Jack Men. I'm not going to try to say his last name. Cincinnati about to score approximately 0 points.
So this is really interesting because like Cincinnati is going to be like a very styles make fights thing. Alabama's defense all year has been a little bit hot and cold in certain spots. I thought their secondary played really well. I think the other side for me is the fascinating matchup because for Alabama going up against Georgia, it was, hey, we know Georgia's secondary probably a little bit outmatched against those Bama wide receivers. We don't know what the situation's going to be with John Mechie. Nick Saban was on the big show with those guys, didn't confirm that he would be out for the year with that knee injury he suffered. But Cincinnati's biggest strength on defense is the secondary there. Ahmad Gardner, Kobe Bryant, who's the Thorpe Award finalist here. That whole back end is the strength of the defense going up against Alabama's strength that I think is going to be a very exciting matchup. So.
Yeah, I think, look, whether or not Cincinnati's going to score any points, whether or not Cincinnati's going to look any good, has nothing to do with whether or not they're the fourth best team in the country.
Right, that's very true.
And if we're going to look at everything in every year of college football about who can match up with the number one team, this conversation gets even more clouded. It doesn't need to. Cincinnati earned their way into the 4 seed. They are the 4 seed. If they win or they get their ass kicked, it has nothing to do with that.
No, and I mean, listen, if Alabama's offensive line comes back down to earth, Cincinnati's got a couple of guys up front, like Myjai Sanders, that can give you some issues if you are not careful. And hell, we've seen with Michigan, you got one game wrecker on that defensive line, you can change a lot of the math.
I mean, that's a hell of a game wrecker, though. Like, you want to talk about it, like Hutchinson has gone out and gotten himself paid.
Pig to pay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The guy's crazy. Okay, let's go to Jake Wallman, who says, it feels good getting some new blood in the playoff. No Clemson. That's rude. No Ohio State, not even Notre Dame. Let's get weird.
This is what the...
It would have been so much better if Alabama lost.
This is, listen, I agree. Signed the Notre Dame faithful over here. But you did mention the ACC part. I saw this note before. This is the first time in 8 seasons of the CFP that we have not had an ACC team represented. So the SEC is the only conference, surprise, surprise, to place a team in the playoff each of the years that we've been doing it.
But isn't that part of the, so the college football playoff expansion conversation, there's years to figure itself out. But one of the complications of the college football playoff expansion conversation is, at its core, what does the college football community want? Because the line of thinking, and this is something I have talked to Bill Hancock in the past about, like the line of thinking around automatic bids versus just picking the best is very different. Not everybody agrees on it. And so we're talking about the fact that the ACC is not even in the college football playoff this year. But the tough part about it is, even if there's expansion, are they going to expand in a way that guarantees every conference a spot? And should they? Because, I mean, do we really want a 4-loss conference champion suddenly finding their way into the college football playoff? We love it in the NFL. I just don't know if we'll love it. We love a 9-7 team now. 9-8 that sneaks into the playoff in the NFL. Will we love that as much if there's a big upset and a team that shouldn't win their conference wins their conference?
I would say this. I think the initial proposal about the 6 highest-ranked conference champions, not just, the Power 5 plus one group of 5, that one could have some merit. Because I think more often than not, you're going to have conference champions that are near the top of all of this or close to it. Like, Pitt is a very good team. Hell, I mean, really, the archetype for this conversation is 2016 USC, whose now grandchild is 2021 Utah in the way that they've played down the stretch. You lost 3 ugly games at the beginning of the year, much the same way that USC team. For anyone that forgets, Max Brown started that season at quarterback for USC. They inserted Sam Darnold around game 4, and by the end of the year, no one wanted to see them. They played an outstanding Rose Bowl game against Penn State, and a team like that is going to exist in some shape or form nearly every year. So I could get down, and I'm not even the biggest conference guy in the world. I think a conference championship game is only as valuable as the quality of team that you play, but I could see that being one that kind of satisfies both camps in this, especially if you're talking about then the top seeds getting a first-round bye.
You're not a big conference guy, Notre Dame?
No, I just, again, I think it's fun to have goals, especially when you're out of things. See the ACC this year. Like, Pitt winning an ACC championship still matters a lot. But if you, to your guys' point, if you go to a conference championship game and beat nothing and nobody, I'm supposed to vote you up just because you beat the sisterhood of the traveling pants over here. Like, I don't see why
that'd be a hell of a game. All the way down
but
to
if
the
you
end.
play a highly ranked opponent, then all of a sudden it's going to be good to go.
Just once I want to be calling a highlight, and it's like, Rutgers had a hard time with the sisterhood of the traveling pants. They just weren't ready.
I bet that'd be a hell of a team, quite honestly, man. It's a lot of camaraderie in that group here.
They all wear the same pants.
Yeah.
You're watching Rankings Reaction presented by Cheesy. He's Michael Jr.
Are we just a brotherhood of traveling pants?
Yeah.
I'm Jason Fitz.
You guys are.
You know what? Despite the great analysis we're getting about the sisterhood of traveling pants, we should point out that one of us on this show, and it is not Christine nor I, is a Heisman voter. And so I think that's it's an incredible honor, and it speaks to the body of work that you've done, and congratulations. That's really cool. B, who should win the Heisman, Mike?
So I'd say this, like, I don't actually know the rules on if I'm supposed to say who I'm going to vote for or not. And I haven't voted yet. I like to wait till the end of conference championship weekend, get the full body and all of this.
You're going to vote for.
And I'm not going to. But I will say this. When you look at the board right now, I'm glad Aiden Hutchinson's name is up there because as we've talked about this, Bryce Young is going to be the overwhelming favorite. You have a Heisman moment like that pitch play yesterday, like so many of his off-the-wall stuff. The weekend, all our eyes are on it. You're going to have a good shot. I'm glad Aiden Hutchinson's name's getting brought up because we've had the Jordan Davis conversation all year long as the point of the spear on that Georgia defense. Aiden Hutchinson had, 14 pressures against Ohio State? He was at his best when his best was demanded of him. Like, he has been insane. Fitz talked about all the money he's going to be making. That's a guy that probably could and should work his way to New York if we're going to send a defensive player this year.
Well, I think this is a great year to send a defensive player because it's not a clear-cut, case for so many players. And I keep looking at Aiden. And you're right. We came in, even a month ago, everybody was convinced Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon was clearly going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I was listening to Mel Kiper a couple of days ago, and he was like, I don't know. Hutchinson, you look at the body of work against really good competition and what he's done in huge games. I mean, it's hard not to look at that kid and say, man, he is getting himself paid. And to think of what he did at Ohio State.
By the way, I can't help but look at him because he is the same skin tone as me. Wears number 97, plays with tremendous motor and hand skill. Like, he is the Marvel's what-if version of the Bosas if they had gone to Michigan instead of Ohio State. Like, I just cannot get away from that when I watch him on tape. I try and avoid it, especially, like, comparisons that, like, skew along racial lines, but my God, it's there.
So I want you guys to all watch the Heisman Show on December 11th with myself and Scooby Mageza because we will be leading into the Heisman ceremony.
That's a plug.
Okay, so there was a woman yesterday. I was leaving the SEC championship, and there was a woman who was with 2 very nice people, and she was like, oh my gosh, you do the Heisman Show. And I was like, yes, I do. And she was like, this is Bryce Young's parents. Oh. And I was like, oh. And then I sat there and told them all the reasons their son was going to win the Heisman. And I go, but don't listen to me because I don't actually know. But so for my sake, I do hope that Bryce Young wins, not only obviously because, I told his parents that he would, but because the kid is he's a redshirt freshman. And he is so incredibly poised and just when you watch him, it's like, how are you so young, literally young? and playing at the level that he's playing. Like, he is literally commanding that offense in a way that I feel like a redshirt freshman, when you think about like how young he is, I don't really expect that kind of poise and command to be coming out of such a young kid.
Yeah, and body control. Like
right.
The amount of times he's able to keep his balance when it looks like he's falling and just pull himself back up. Should be noted, he's not eligible for the draft this year. So I think that's
exactly.
And I've talked to coaches before around the NFL that'll tell you they scout quarterbacks in 2-year bunches. So anybody that's in the quarterback market right now that doesn't know where their team's going to be is looking at it saying, I don't want to reach for a quarterback because Bryce is coming out. Like there's going to be a movement for Bryce Young. You guys know that I'm a lover of chaos. And I said it a second ago. I'll say it again. If I had the opportunity to make a genie wish come true, I would put Hutchinson in as the Heisman winner. And not because Bryce Young didn't do anything incredible, but because of how the conversation specifically around Michigan has changed over the course of the last month, due such in large part to his play. And you're watching some highlights here with his explosiveness off the edge. But if you go back and watch the Ohio State game, his ability to disguise where he's coming from and get through the line at any point is really incredible. And even when Ohio State was putting everything, like there were a couple of plays where Stroud moved the entire help to one side just to try and get through. And Hutchinson was like, cool, I'm still going to get you your face. Like, I'm a lover of chaos. And this year, without a clear cut all year long, wow, this guy has been it. The lover of defense for me wants it to be, this is the same.
You don't think Bryce Young has been a clear cut?
When it was 10-10 with a minute left, we weren't saying against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and that offense had looked putrid. We weren't saying that Bryce Young was a Heisman winner. Then he drives 95 yards, and we're like, this is his Heisman moment.
Exactly.
I think he's had enough of those. I think to Christine's point, like he has been poised and consistent for the vast majority of this year. I just had to go and remind myself, 43 touchdowns against 4 interceptions for the player who was the question mark coming into this year. When we looked at everyone predicting Alabama might take a step back, might lose 2 games this season, a lot of it was predicated on, hey, maybe they finally miss now in this modern era on quarterback. How do you follow up Tua and Mac Jones back-to-back with Bryce Young, who does not fit the profile, even with Tua as his peer? I mean, Bryce Young is, 6 foot, $190, soaking wet? Like, that is not a big player in a conference that can eat you alive. And he has gone out there and looked like he's playing football, seeing zeros and ones everywhere.
Exactly.
But to your point, the first 3 weeks, we were like, oh, maybe this guy's not it. And then the Iron Bowl, we're like, maybe maybe he's struggling.
I don't think the Iron Bowl is when we were like, oh, is Bryce Young even good? Like he's
it was never is he even good? It was is anybody going to step up and claim the Heisman?
I feel like I feel like Bryce Young was always the front runner. Is anybody else going to challenge Bryce Young at that number 1 spot?
Yeah, and I will say this. I think we've had opportunities along the way. I think Kenny Pickett from Pitt has a realistic chance to wind up in New York. He's been sensational all year, played his way off draft boards. I think Matt Corral, had it not been, certainly the loss to Alabama didn't help in the head-to-head there. He ended up pretty banged up in the middle of the year. I think dealt with injuries on both ankles. He's a guy that, if you're looking and talking about this word kind of like an MVP of value, Matt Corral as valuable or more valuable to his team than anyone in the country. So those are all guys that could and should be involved.
Yeah, just ask Lane Kiffin's bank account after the fancy contract extension they announced yesterday. Matt Corral needs to be coming in like an agent and being like, Kiff. I'll take my percentage on that. I don't know why. Maybe Kiffy? I don't know. I'm coming up with nicknames for Kiffin.
That's weird.
Ken Kiffy Jr.?
Oh, that's pretty good. That's quality work. It's time now for Crunch Time, brought to you by Cheez-It. Take a look at some of the crunch time moments. And you know that we're going to start with Baylor, Oklahoma. Spencer Sanders whips a pass up, and then look at that. Look at that. Oh.
My God.
Braden Utley, the big man, gets a pick. And, there's some athleticism here, guys.
A pick thick. Or a thick pick.
I like pick thick.
But the coolest part, I haven't looked at it. I don't know if we're going to show it. The next series, a Baylor offensive lineman caught a ball on a deflection. Because big boys are doing great things.
Big boys?
All right, up next, Conference USA Championship, Western Kentucky, UTSA. We expected this to be an absolute fun game. Look at this one. Zachary Franklin, check out this juggling act.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Ringling Brothers, pardon me, Bailey.
Trust the triangle, baby.
That's beautiful.
Oh, my God. Meat.
We'll go next to get a little bit of App State love here against Louisiana. I saw this play 15 times yesterday, and I never get tired.
Oh, my God.
Levi Lewis, swiggity-swooty, going for the booty.
Goodbye.
That was a really cool game yesterday. We've talked so much about the carousel and the right-wrong way to do things here. You had Billy Napier finishing out his tenure with Louisiana right now. He's wearing both hats. the crowd, the team, the send-off that he got for what he's done at that Louisiana program was well-deserved and really cool to see yesterday.
That was such a perfect moment. Also, look at this one. Kenny Pickett, you just mentioned it. This play is going to change college football.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's already loud conversations about whether or not it is legal now. It won't be legal by next year.
Well, because, again, you see the intention. It really, a fake slide, you can say it looks like he stumbled in there, but regardless, puts defensive players in an impossible situation. If player safety is the goal and you want the slide to be a weapon, we've seen guys ejected off hits like that on the defensive side when they go, and now you're telling them, this is like when Andrew Luck used to truck stick guys when he was going towards out of bounds. Like, at some point, defensive players have to have a bit of recourse, and this is a spot that's going to draw that attention.
It's already so difficult to handle it from a defensive player. Like, we can't make their lives more difficult. We wanted to show you guys one more play. What better way to explain Baylor's goal line stand versus Oklahoma State than with the song?
Oh, you did.
One Cheez-It is about a square inch. It's just the right size, though it doesn't sound very big. And football fans know that all it takes is an inch to swing the momentum on which the game will hinge. It might sound crazy, you might not believe it, but the difference in winning and losing could be one Cheez-It. It's a game of inches. It's a game of inches. It's a game of inches. And there is no doubt every inch is one more Cheez-It in my mouth.
And it also
so
full body chills.
I mean, that is just 98 degrees got nothing on that.
I'm just saying.
That was
Original
that
vocals.
Was beautiful. That was beautiful. I felt so bad.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. I was watching with Harry Douglas. Literally, first of all, their starting running back wasn't in the game. So that kid was just trying to put himself on the map, win the game for
My
his
time to
team.
shine.
And it was like,
When he caught the corner, I thought he was
sad.
in. And then I was like, well, you just showed every NFL team about your elite speed. I mean, that's all I kept thinking about.
Damn.
He had the...
We just celebrate. We put the music
heartbreaking.
video up there. It's supposed to be warm and understanding. It's supposed to be emotional. And that's where you want to be when Jesus comes back? Making fun of poor old Joe Dirt?
It was pretty... All right.
I will say this. Baylor's defense and Dave Aranda in what is increasingly becoming a defensive conference. 4 turnovers yesterday and 2 monster goal line stands, including that one. Baylor's defense won that game all by their damn self.
Inject more Baylor Dave Aranda press conferences into my veins, too, because he's just like, yep, we won. We're doing things differently.
That man is a supercomputer.
It is great.
All right, so we mentioned the college football playoff. We're going to be there. Well, you guys can, too. Join us for the CFP All Access virtual experience. All you got to do is go to ESPN.com/CFP All Access. Pre-register now and enter to win a trip to this year's national championship game in Indianapolis. We'll all be there. We'll all hang out. We'll all have a good time. Remember, ESPN.com/CFP All Access.
Good job.
Thank you. Are you just proud of the fact that I managed to make it through a read? That is.
Yeah, no, this is, the most words you've strung together without screwing them up in a while.
This show, you know what? It took the first drive to get my footing under me, and now I feel like I've started to get a little rhythm. Feel good about it.
I mean, you wait too long, and all of a sudden you're buried at halftime like Georgia was, so...
Look,
I'm just saying
I'm having a hell of a game. And you know what? Who's going to back me up on that? Sam Acho. Acho, tell him I'm awesome. That's all we need you to do. Just tell him I'm
I can neither agree nor disagree with the last statement. Beanie's awesome. Goal looks awesome. Fits. We may have to fight.
You know
My nickname is
Wow.
Beanie, and Sam calls me Beanie.
Yeah, that is.
It's a nickname. It's a nickname.
By the way,
Okay.
Fitz, he said
Just
you guys
FYI.
may have to fight. I don't see that going well for you.
No.
it would
But
be very
remember
bad.
one thing,
Punt.
Acho. And
Punt
this is an important thing to remember.
Oh, no.
If I kick your ass, then you got your ass kicked by me. There's no street fight.
But that wouldn't
If you
happen.
kick my ass, then you have to tell everybody you beat up a former fiddle player. Not even for a manly country band, from a very questionable country band. There is no street cred in that. You didn't get Zach Brown band's fiddle player.
I thought you were going to say you beat up a 4-year-old. I was like, hold on, give yourself some more credit. You're bigger than a 4-year-old. Come on now.
Take a 4-year-old.
This is going to happen. Twitter fam, this is happening.
Oh, my God.
Live stream.
Get
my
the fiddle
God.
player from Charlie Daniels Band.
Okay, we are just hot route. Gary Barta is going to join us, which means he's going to join all of us. So this is an opportunity to talk to Gary. Gary, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Thank you so much for the time. What was the most difficult decision in the room for the committee as they debated the rankings?
Most difficult? They're all important. They're all challenging. I don't really see this as difficult. Trying to figure out, number one versus number two, maybe Alabama, Michigan. After last night, both teams played incredibly well, and both teams have a strong body of work coming into the game. So maybe that was the most discussed. It ended up being a strong consensus, though, with Alabama number one. After that win over Georgia, Georgia had been undefeated all year. And just the way Alabama beat them, really, they rose to the top in the eyes of the committee.
I want to talk about Cincinnati because obviously they're the first Group of 5 team to be in the CFP. What was the conversation around Cincinnati being in the top 4 at the end of this?
Well, to start with, they're the last undefeated team in college football, so that's a great place to start. Beyond that, they won a conference championship last night, so the committee certainly looked at that. And you've heard us talk all year about the win at Notre Dame. That was something that they have on their resume that the committee has been impressed about. So you take all those, you add it up, plus the way they've played the last few weeks against East Carolina, SMU, and then last night's conference championship win against Houston. All of that adds together for them to be slotted at number 4.
Gary, we know that all the rankings, not just the top 4, matter a lot in the way the rest of bowl season works out here. Ohio State at number 6. We know Baylor got the win in the Big 12 championship game. So what was the discussion like around those two teams as you guys decided on that 6th spot?
Well, we looked at Ohio State and what we've put out so far, the top 6. Compared them to Notre Dame, compared them to the people above that. At some point, we did compare them to Baylor, and I won't talk about where Baylor ends up at this point yet. But Ohio State, all year long, the committee talked about them being one of the best teams in the country. Their offense has been incredible all year long, all the weapons that they have. Defense, very strong. The committee did pay attention the way Michigan was able to beat them, so that certainly came into our discussion. But when it was all said and done, having Ohio State as the 6th best team in the country, there was a lot of comfort and consensus on that as well.
Gary, I know you said you don't want to talk too much about where Baylor is, but I know we were together in those mock selection committee meetings a few months ago, and you did talk a lot about conference championships meaning something. With Baylor being the conference champ and also having wins over number 5 and number 12 and number 14, how does that keep them from being in that top 6 or even top 5 conversation?
The committee thinks and considers all of our different protocol, the record, the strength of schedule, the opponents, either common opponents, head-to-head. And then we talk about this every week. The committee watches all the games. So the committee has watched all of Baylor's games and all of Ohio State's games and all of the teams that are in this top 10. And at the end of the day, all those things are considered, including the conference championship. We talked about, some teams get to play in a conference championship. Some teams win in a conference championship. Some teams lose in a conference championship. And then in some cases, they don't play. All of that has to be considered, and it is considered. And then we still rank them in order that the committee believes from highest to on down.
Gary, real quick, the voice of the people here, I guess. So many people have a theory that the committee decides on some of the rankings based on the matchups they do or don't want to see. For example, not wanting to see Georgia and Alabama play again quickly. Is any consideration given when ranking the teams to the matchups that the committee does or doesn't want to see?
The answer is no. We came into the room last night. We've been watching all year, but then as of this weekend, we had a chance to watch all the championship games. By the way, that's a blast. I'm sitting next to a Hall of Fame NFL player on this side and a highly accomplished coach on that side, and all these different perspectives. And for us to watch those games together is really, really enjoyable and a thrill. But on top of that, getting everybody's perspective. So when we watch those games, by now I've forgotten your question, but just the opportunity to then take that and add that to our resume. I'm sorry. Please, seriously, ask me the question again.
So do you guys factor? No worries, Gary. You've been asked a million questions today, brother. Like, do you guys factor in the matchups you do or don't want to see?
The answer is no. So we come back into the room after watching all that together, and then we start to go down our process. We go 1 to 25, and we start at the beginning. We start 1 through 4. We have 1 through 6 on the board. You've been through that process, and then we have discussions. We talk about everybody's resumes. We have them up on the screen. We go through that process. We rank them, and when it came out 1 through 4, there was no discussion about matchups. None of that occurs until after the rankings are all done.
Gary, we appreciate your honesty. Every time you've come on with us, you've always been very blunt and very honest, and it's an unenviable position defending an entire room sometimes. We appreciate you, my friend. Have a great holiday.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Same to you.
So, Sam, let's get you back into this conversation. We're hanging out with Sam Acho. You were asking tough questions about Baylor. So, do you have a problem with Baylor being below Ohio State and Notre Dame?
I do have a problem with Baylor being below Ohio State and Notre Dame, and my reasons are threefold. Number one, I look at the strength of schedule. I look at who Baylor beat. Baylor beat BYU, which was 12 going in. Baylor beat Oklahoma, which was 14. Baylor also avenged their loss to Oklahoma State, which was a number 5 in the conference championship. So those 3 wins, to me, mean more than maybe Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame doesn't have any top 25 wins. Even though if anybody's excited about Notre Dame, I'm excited about Notre Dame. Well, me and Golick are both pumped about Marcus Freeman and the entire team about Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, and their future. But then you go to their schedule, right? And like how they played some of those games. Like North Carolina game, they won, but it wasn't pretty. Right, and there were some other games where you're like, okay, cool, like they won, but it wasn't pretty. And then towards the end, they won pretty against inferior opponents. And so I'm looking at Baylor saying they are coming in hot at the right time. How are they not only not even top 4, which the argument is not there anymore because of the teams that won, but not 5 and then not 6 in front of Ohio State? I get it. Ohio State lost to Michigan, and now Michigan's the number 2 team. The loss doesn't look as bad. I just feel for Baylor being a division champ, conference champ, and still have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, Acho, I'm a little surprised they jumped up above Ohio State, especially considering how bad that Oregon loss looks now in retrospect, right? The way the Ducks have sort of limped to the finish line.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I needed Oklahoma State to win that game so bad. Okay, let's talk about the top 4. You don't feel like Baylor is where they should be. Do you feel like the committee got it right with the top 4 of the CFP rankings?
Yeah, I love the top 4. I really do. I initially, going into the game last night, I didn't think that Alabama could do anything to jump, even if they won. I didn't think it could jump Georgia. And then after about halfway through, when they had 365 yards of offense, and Georgia usually gives up 230, I said, oh, wow. Like, not only are these the 2 best teams in college football, at least what I thought at the time, I said Alabama's number 1. And then lastly, Michigan played. And I said, all right, hold on. Michigan's got to be that number 2 team. And so I think they got it right 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm a little bit surprised that Baylor's not 5 or 6. But I think Notre Dame at 5 is good, and Ohio State, that one still surprises me.
Acho, as always, we appreciate your time, my friend. Have a great holiday.
Thank you for coming in looking so dapper.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I felt like Gary Barta, right? I'm over here. I'm sitting next to Heisman Trophy. I'm sitting next to the greatest people, Christine and Golick, and I think we could probably stop there.
Listen, that seems like you got a pretty great list right there.
Yes.
An enlightened mind like Sam Acho certainly understands.
What we've discovered is that we've got 3 people on the show with me today that are very, very angry that their teams aren't in the college football playoff.
I'm not angry. Listen, I watched Georgia take down Clemson. I watched Alabama lose or Miami lose to Alabama. I'm not mad.
We got Notre Dame has no coach we know anything about. The Big 12's not in the playoff, and Texas isn't back. All of you get out of here.
We all know about this guy.
It's about his NFL team. See how they're doing.
Uh-oh.
You know what?
You
know what? Feeling pretty good. We're going to beat the Washington football team today.
Are you sure about that?
I'm not sure about anything, Mike. I'm sure I'm bringing Bill Connelly on. That's happening next. The ESPN college football expert extraordinaire, Bill Connelly, joining us. It's Rankings Reaction, by the way, presented by Cheez-It. We're having a little bit of fun here, Bill. I just asked Gary Barta if the committee puts any consideration into matchups, because there's this theory that, the committee didn't want to see certain teams play. He said very blankly no, which I buy because maybe I'm an idiot. Do you buy it?
Well, I buy it in that it's still a poll. You can have the discussions you're going to have, and then they all basically say, okay, look at your screen and vote and all that. So even if they discuss it, you don't know how it's going to turn out. But I was kind of hoping, honestly, that they would express a preference and just put Alabama and Georgia together in the semis. Just get it out of the way so we can at least make sure that, we got a clean shot for a Michigan or a Cincinnati in the final. But I guess I didn't get my way on that either. But no, it is still a poll. And so there is some sort of like plausible deniability, I guess, when it comes to how these things came together.
So Acho's talking about how he doesn't like the fact that Baylor isn't in the top 6. Do you feel like the CFP got the final rankings correct?
Look, Baylor lost to TCU. I can't really get past. That's a really bad loss. And so, there was a case. If you wanted to put them 5th or 6th, there was certainly logic behind it. But I'm okay. I assume they're 7th. I guess maybe 8th, but surely not. I'm okay with that because they really did have by far the worst loss of any of the teams that ended up contending at the end.
So for anyone that's not aware, Bill Connelly puts out the SP Plus rankings each and every week here. It's an offensive, tempo-adjusted, opponent-adjusted metric for measuring efficiency in college football. There are always some surprises that pop up in this relative to, like you said, what are ultimately polls in a lot of these other rankings. So, Bill, as you look at the top 6 that we got here, in terms of SP Plus, in terms of the efficiency and the quality of these teams, was there a big surprise in this bunch?
Well, I guess not really, just because it didn't really move at the end of the year. The rankings last year, last week, were, Georgia first, but they were so far ahead in first that they're still first. And Ohio State was second, but they didn't play, so they're still second. So I guess the surprise was that there was no movement whatsoever after the latest round of games. Everything got closer together. Georgia's not nearly as far ahead of the field now, but it is kind of interesting to step back and realize that, SP Plus is meant to be like a predictive rating, a forward-facing thing. How will teams play moving forward? That's kind of a best thing. And no matter what they say, the committee says, it's still a most deserving thing to a certain degree with the committee. The teams are kind of the same this year. I think Notre Dame's like about 7th, if I remember right. So they're all right there, and the best and the most deserving ended up kind of overlapping for the most part.
Bill, if you could just do some of that great analytics work to find a reason to give me hope about the Raiders today, that's all I'd need for the rest of the day. Now they've got me in my feels. Appreciate you, my friend. Have a great holiday.
I got nothing for you. I'm sorry.
Nobody does. Appreciate you, Bill. Thanks so much.
That's not a you problem.
No, that's a me problem. That's a me problem.
Worth noting, by the way, what Bill mentioned there, how this lines up, because I always think it's a good reminder for everybody. If you're looking in college football season at metrics that'll kind of tell you where things are going, SP Plus is an awesome one. Bill does a really good job of updating these. It's got a lot of relative information that goes into measuring these teams. There's also the metric that ends up being the most predictive for the committee at the end of the year, and that's strength of resume. So if you look at Bill's SP Plus rankings, Georgia was number 1 still, Ohio State was number 2, Bama was number 3, Michigan was number 4, followed by Cincinnati at 5, Texas A&M at 6, and Notre Dame at 7. So that was how that worked out. Strength of resume, almost exactly. And this is the case almost every year. If you go look at the final college football rankings from every year and then go check at the strength of resume for that year, it almost always lines up the same. This year, strength of resume. So what the average team in college football would do against your schedule. Would they be able to go out? The chances they could accomplish the same thing that you did against that schedule. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, Cincinnati. Number 5, Notre Dame. That is the top 5 of strength of resume. Michigan State at number 6 and Ole Miss at 7. You wouldn't get to Ohio State until down at 10. But again, the top 5 usually almost always predictive. I don't know if we've ever had a strength of resume outside of 6 find their way into the Final Four when it's all said and done. Something similar to that. Don't quote me on it.
I'll still be waiting, too, because so far up to this year, the BCS would have given us the same Final Four teams. Not always the same order, but the same Final Four teams as the committee every year. I haven't seen a metric yet, so we'll see where things go there. Always an interesting thing for people to yell about. Speaking of people yelling, I don't know how you can yell about this. I don't think there's a lot of controversy on this, but it's our time to rank way more important things, and it's my turn. Now, that means at this time of year, usually I'm fully in Santa regalia, but the Raiders play today, so I held it back. Top 6 Christmas movies.
I feel like I'm gonna.
This is gonna get bloody.
All right, number 6. We'll start pretty simple. Home Alone.
Okay.
Home Alone at number 6.
It went up 1.
Properly rated.
It went up 1. I feel like that's fine.
I don't know why it went up 1. At number 5.
Last week it was number 7.
Christmas with the Cranks. This is my upset that a lot of people don't realize. It's so rewatchable. I realized that Christmas with the Cranks went from the friend that I was dating to the friend that I was in love with. I can every once in a while watch it, and then all of a sudden I find myself every year gravitating to it. It is a great Christmas movie.
I don't know if I've seen that movie.
I have never even heard of this movie.
Okay, well, the good news is it's out there on all of the
platforms. Is this like an old person movie?
No, it's a Tim Allen movie. Yeah, it's from a few years ago. It's
I mean, I've seen a lot of movies.
A few years ago with
When was? Hold on, I gotta find out.
Christmas with the Grinch. Yeah. Okay, Christmas with the Grinch. Like, so they, the whole premise is that their daughter is
2004. That's not a few years ago.
Okay, that's longer.
I mean, Jason was like 30 at that point.
I was like,
I was.
What?
All right, age shaming won't work here.
What's
At
up with
number
the final
4
four?
on the list, go check out Christmas with the Cranks. The newest version of the Grinch. I absolutely love the newest version. Like all of the Grinches
Is this
are good.
the live action one?
No. The animated one that came out like 2 years ago.
oh yeah.
There's another one?
Not 2 years ago.
The newest, not the one from the 70s, and not the one that Jim Carrey was in.
Wait.
Not the Jim Carrey
Oh,
one.
that one came out in 2018.
All right, so that's
That
3
one is
years
a few
ago.
years ago.
3 years ago.
I haven't seen it yet.
Wait, I haven't seen this one. I
Go
thought
check
you
it
meant
out.
the one
It
with
is
Jim Carrey.
it's like they took the animated, like the short, and they made it into a full. Oh, it's great. It's great. Benedict Cumberbatch is the voice for the Grinch. Really good work. At number 3, White Christmas. And this is where everybody says they haven't seen it, to which I would say, why is it that in a streaming world, whenever old people say they haven't listened to music, everybody's like, it's right there. But whenever young people say, I haven't seen that movie, White Christmas is on Netflix. Go check it out. It's a Christmas classic.
Maybe nobody wants to watch it because it's not a good movie.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, is it not true that the newest generation will turn around to old people, myself included, and say, you're not staying current because you choose not to listen to it? Is there not some breadth of like, hey, I want to go check out the Beatles? The White Christmas is the Beatles of Christmas.
Man, I got a lot going on at Christmas time. No, I haven't seen that movie.
Okay.
You've never seen White Christmas?
No.
Oh, man. Like, seriously? Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye. Go check it out. Like, there's a line in your Christmas Vacation. Happiest Christmas since Bing Crosby was dancing with Danny F and K. That comes from White Christmas.
Can we see what number 2 is here?
I'm so curious.
Number 2, this was the toughest part of the decision.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Elf.
Okay.
The committee debated a long time because number 2 and number 1 are really interchangeable for me because number 1, the most quotable, I think, for me, Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time deciding, but I feel like in June, I will watch Christmas Vacation. Elf is much more a Christmas time movie for me.
How is A Christmas Story not on here?
That is
Christmas
shocking.
Story is way overrated.
See, no, Home Alone to me is overrated.
I agree with
Christmas
that.
Story should be up in this list somewhere.
It's a classic. Like, I don't know what White Christmas is or Christmas with the Cranks, but I feel like
do you know the song I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas?
Obviously.
Like the second movie it ever appeared in was there. It became famous from this
sounds
movie.
awful then. I definitely don't want to watch that.
It became famous from that movie.
As I wear a shirt inspired by Elf, I have to say what it's done is the most impressive because it came in as a modern movie and made its way into the Christmas history, Christmas canon that early. That's an almost impossible task. Shout out to Zooey Deschanel, lovely singing throughout that movie.
She's so good.
And by the way, in Jon Favreau, I always think it's funny when you can be like, yeah, by the way, I directed Iron Man and Elf. Like, that just is such it shows his creativity. And thank God they never did a sequel. All right, he's Mike Golick Jr., she's Christine Williamson, I'm Jason Fitz. You guys have been hanging out all year with us, and you have every single year for this show. I cannot tell you how thankful we are for everybody behind the scenes that helps make this show happen. This show started several years ago on Mike's couch in his house with an iPhone. And we've gotten from there to the point that it takes an entire village to make this show happen. Luna's been incredible working with us every single week, but it takes so many people. We cannot say thank you enough to all of them and to all of you that choose to spend your time ranking and reacting with us every single week. Thank you to Cheez-It for being a part of this too. This is Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Thank you so much and have a wonderful holiday.
Oh.